This grotesque yet fascinating work is Saturn Devouring His Son, one of the most important and brilliant works of the Spanish painter Francisco de Goya. In this painting, made between 1819 and 1823, Goya depicts the moment when Saturn, the Roman god of time, devours one of his children. Saturn is also known as Kronos in Greek mythology, and in both versions, he is the most powerful god among the others, until his son, Jupiter, or Zeus in Greek, took his place. In Goya's work, Saturn is coming from the darkness in a creepy but imponent way. His wide-open eyes seem to pop out of his face, and his hands are gripping tightly the body of the sun that he's about to bite. The sun's body isn't reacting to the attack. We don't see his head or one of his arms, which leads us to think that these parts have already been devoured by his father. The child is already lifeless. The colors used in Saturn and in the background are sober and darker, making a contrast to the lighter color of the sun's skin and the vivid red shade of his blood. This is a pretty impactful scene to watch, don't you think? Man, I'm getting chills just looking at it. The subject matter of the image has this stressful effect, and it reflects Goya's fear, worry, and pessimistic view of humanity in the world. The conflicts that were affecting his country at the time, such as Napoleon's wars and his two illnesses, were important catalysts for the inspiration behind this work. The painting is based on a moment in mythology that happens in both Roman and Greek versions. This moment is when Saturn begins to eat his children after discovering a prophecy about his death that would come when one of his sons usurped him. Oh, the usual family matters. It looks like the artist's intention here is to shock the viewer with graphic details of a relevant point in this moment, that Saturn ate his children alive. Oh, the usual fellowship between a father and his children.
But maybe it's actually his last mukbang with a son. What do you think? Drop a comment. I am very curious of what you think.
Furthermore, it's possible to note that the choice of this specific moment and the way it was portrayed makes us believe that Goya's idea was to translate the feeling of the loss of power. Saturn seems to be going crazy at the possibility of losing its ultimate power, to the point of devouring its own son. In addition to the portrayal of the act itself being frightening, other details further fuel this atmosphere. Let's analyze them together now. So here we go. Saturn's hair is white and disheveled, indicating a man of advanced age, an elderly father. His facial expression is one of madness and lack of control, reinforced by the way his eyes seem wide open, staring into the distance, away from his prey. The way his fingers squeeze the child's body also shows how exaggerated and ferocious the force Saturn is using, not giving his son a chance to escape. I mean, escape as if he were still alive, of course. Saturn withstands his body on one knee as if he is struggling to get up, in a position reminiscent of something animalistic. This act indeed does look like a savage animal attack. It's also interesting to note the difference in size between the figures. Saturn is bigger, indicating his great power and more age, while his son is smaller, a symbol of youth and vulnerability. Now, let's look at the scenario. What is around the two figures? The background is dark and without any apparent elements, which may indicate that this act happened in a remote and hidden place. A hideout in a cave or in a forest at night, maybe? What do you think? I feel like at this point, you must be wondering, right, but how did Saturn devouring his son relate to decoration? What's the connection with Art Deco at all? So, Saturn Devouring His Son is part of the collection Black Paintings, a set of 14 paintings and prints that Goya did in his house in La Quinta del Sordo, in a village outside Madrid. All of them are painted directly on the walls of the house. No need to do the math in your head, I'll explain it to you clearly now. These paintings were made in the early 19th century, following the Art Deco concept where art is fundamentally made to decorate. But wait a minute, the Art Deco movement only really started at the beginning of the next century, to be more precise, around 80 years later. Can you imagine it? Francisco de Goya was an artist ahead of his time. Respect! These 14 paintings depicted dreadful themes, using a lot of dark pigments and black shades. One of these paintings, Two Old Men Eating Soup, resembles Saturn devouring his son, as it also has a gruesome representation of the act of eating. It was never Goya's intention to make black paintings public or even sell them. That's why he did them on the walls of La Quinta del Sordo. He just wanted to express his emotions in the best way he knew and keep them in his favorite place, his home. It must be for this reason that these paintings and prints are his most personal and genuine works. You look at these paintings and can feel the sad and distressing feelings that Goya was also having. 50 years later, Baron Émile de Langeais bought La Quinta del Sordo only to own the black paintings. But unlike Goya, the Baron didn't want to keep the paintings as decoration, so he transferred Goya's works to canvas. Unfortunately, this transfer caused some serious damage to the paintings, so he gave them to the state of Spain, which later donated them to the Prado Museum, where they have been on view to this day. This venue is where many of the most important Spanish paintings are, like Las Meninas by Diego Velázquez and more. Francisco de Goya was one of Spain's most influential artists at his time, especially in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, as he was considered a bridge of transition from the old masters to the modern. Goya always loved art and began studying it at a very young age, 14, and his main influences were the Brabantia painter Peter Paul Rubens and the Spanish painter Diego Velázquez. It's even believed that Saturn Devouring His Son was inspired by Rubens' painting with the same name, Saturn Devouring His Son, from 1636. No competition here, guys. Both of them are incredible and from different styles. While Rubens' version is more into the drama of the Baroque, Goya's is all about shadow and disturbance. Most of Goya's works follow dark themes, but at the beginning of his career, his style was totally different. In 1786, he was working for the Spanish court, painting portraits of royalty and aristocracy, which were lighter and more conventional works. Everything changed in 1793 when Goya had a loss of hearing due to an unknown illness. Many even thought that his house, La Quinta del Sordo, translated as Villa of the Deaf One, was named after him. Not at all, it was just a coincidence of life, since the house had previously belonged to a deaf man. From then on, his works began to reflect political and social themes, personal fears, and anxieties. After the black paintings, Goya again released more complex and dark works in the Disasters of War set. This set was inspired by his personal experience with the Peninsular War and the conflicts in Spain. Many consider it the period when Goya produced his best works, but it's disturbing to know that so much geniality came at the expense of the artist's suffering and hardships. Sadly, this wasn't the first and will not be the last time that an artist will deliver a beautiful work, despite not being in a good mental, emotional, or physical state. However, it's important to recognize Goya's strength and sensitivity in transforming his pain into one of the most beautiful forms of expression, art. La Tauromaquia, his last work, is a set of prints of bullfighting scenes, a traditional Spanish event. Compared to his previous works, those were slightly more conventional than dark, but not any less amazing. After all of this, I sincerely hope you didn't have any bad digestion while watching this video. Did you like learning more about Saturn Devouring His Son? What were the sensations you felt with this painting? Were you scared, fascinated by it, or both? If you liked the video and want to discover other paintings as brilliant as this one, please leave your like here and subscribe to the channel. Also, importantly, turn on the notifications and you'll know when new content is posted here. See you next time!